On today's show, I am joined by David Lee for the third time this week. And on this episode, we'll be talking about the new guys. For the Hawks, they all bring varying levels of intrigue from Alexander-Walker to Kennard, even in Folly Dante and Caleb Houstan. We'll get into all of that and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2049 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Thursday evening here in early September. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel. Football season is closer than you think. And right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out. Subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts. We are on YouTube. So please like this video as you're watching it. We're also on Apple and Spotify, Overcast, all those places. And we definitely appreciate you checking out the show, spreading the word for us, and all the support always through the summer and into the season, which is rapidly approaching right now. I'll be joined in a moment by David Lee for the third time this week. David and I talked for like an hour and a half earlier this week about all kinds of things. If you missed it, earlier this week, we talked about Porzingis on the most recent episode of this podcast. Before that, a Zachary Richichet beat Krejci Eurobasket kind of deep dive with David. And then this one, the third installment, is going to be on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, Caleb Houstan, and Folly Dante. Mostly on Alexander-Walker and Canard, but certainly the other guys at the end, and basically a new guy check-in for the Hawks, who is now in the fold for Atlanta. What David thinks about the Alexander-Walker and Canard fits, the additions, and all of that stuff coming up on the podcast. One quick note at the top of the show. Zachary Richichet played this morning, Thursday morning, for France at Eurobasket. Played much better. I mentioned earlier this week he had a kind of a rough one in the most recent game before this, but today 15 points, 7 rebounds, played very well. And for me, he's been the best wing for France, and that's interesting. He's not starting, but he should be probably playing more and more. And also, the knockout round for Eurobasket begins on Saturday. So that's going to feature Porzingis and Latvia, as well as France and Richichet playing Saturday. And from this point forward, it's win or go home for those teams. So it may only have one more for each team, but we'll see how that goes. And we'll talk about that next week on the podcast. So anyway, without any further delay, we'll dive right back in now with my friend David Lee talking about Alexander-Walker, Kennard, and more. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is the quote-unquote other guy they brought in, but he was actually the guy that was the free agent acquisition. He was one of the bigger contracts to get signed and change teams this summer. Same exercise, honestly. What did you think about that when it happened? Has anything changed? Because we haven't seen him play in the way we have been watching Porzingis play. But also, there was just a lot less uncertainty. At least for me, it's like we kind of know what he is. But what did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, another big fan of that deal. I think for me, I wanted, because I know a lot of Timberwolves fans and they would complain about him in the playoffs. So I just kind of like asked him. I was like, tell me about Nickeil. You know, like, what is this something that I should be wary about? And I think when I think about the Timberwolves roster, they were at their best with Mike Conley, right, running the show. The issue is Mike Conley's getting older, and so when Mike Conley's getting older, now they're trying to transition Anthony Edwards, or even they had Nickeil handle the ball, they had Rob handle the ball. Issue is that's probably asking too much of Nickeil to initiate the offense, especially in the playoff setting. Now, if he's doing it by committee, I'm all over that. I think that's completely fine. And when you add him to Luke, you add him to potentially maybe Kobe or Vit Krejci or Dyson, Jalen, like you have a plethora of ball handlers. And one thing that Nickeil does really good is we talked a little bit about how like Vita is the best attacking closeouts. Nickeil was one of the better supplementary playmakers in the league for my money. He had some popping like alley-oop assists from when I went to look at some of his tape right after we traded for him, or actually we signed him. He was in the 74th percentile rim assists per 75. And it's pretty simple, like what he'll do for the Hawks. But it's also like we haven't had a guy who does these like baseline things on both sides of the ball in a very long time. Like we talk about how KP's a very rare archetype, but having a guy who can, you know, run some second side pick and roll, but also be a competent defender and also space the floor and drive the ball, like he's well worth the price we paid, in my opinion. And he had some no-look assist in his reel that I was really impressed by. He's, of course, very disruptive defensively, too. And he was 99th percentile in ball screen navigation per B-ball index, and that popped on tape. Like, you definitely see that. He was in the 98th percentile in offensive fouls drawn per game. And that's an element that outside of Garrison Matthews, the Hawks defenders don't really lean into. This is actually a question I want to ask Dyson. Like, I almost think Dyson is too ethical to flop or take charges. So that's
He
what
kinda
I'll be
is.
asking him on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to ask him that on media day. But that's like an element that the Hawks they don't grift a ton. You know, like outside of really Garrison and Clinton, those guys aren't on the roster anymore. They don't grift, and that's a part of the game that helps the Hawks. You know, like that's a full out stop. It's not like a transition opportunity, but like that is a stop. You know, there's no shot attempts, whatever it may be. So, 6'9" wingspan, has the mobility to defend guards. Probably would be asking a lot of him to consistently defend wings, but I think a Dyson Nickeil backcourt defensively like makes me really excited, and that's not a fun time for any team in the NBA. I don't care who the other backcourt is. You're not going to want to play against a Dyson Nickeil lineup, and that may not even be the whole game. But if you have to go get a bucket against Dyson Nickeil, you put Zach, Jalen, and KP / Onyeka out there. That's a really nice look defensively, and I think that's something the Hawks will lean on from time to time in end of game scenarios, or even in different sort of bench stretches where they want to lean very defensively inclined. And he's a big part of the reason why they can do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's so well rounded, and he doesn't have the outlier Dyson level habit creation defensively.
Yeah,
but he can habit create defensively. Like he's able to get in passing lanes, get deflections. He is not as big as Dyson, but he's got plenty of size for a perimeter player. I don't know if you saw this. It's been funny to me. I've seen him listed as a small forward like multiple times this summer, and he's not really. Like, in fact, I've seen the one that's really getting me is listing Dyson as a 2 and Nickeil as a 3. And it's like if you were demanding that those guys were not the same position, Dyson is quite a bit bigger and more physical than Nickeil. Nickeil is still plenty, but I bring that up because he is 6'9" wingspan. He is 6'5". He can defend a lot of wings. Like Dyson's still the number one wing defender, but on a lot of nights they might go to Nickeil. That's totally fine as well. And the shooting, I think I gave a stat when they signed him, but it's 38.5% over the last 3 years from three, 900 attempts. Like that's a sample size where I believe it. Like early in his career, he was not that level of shooter. I had Dave Moore on the pod. Apparently, like Nickeil is a maniac worker in a good way. I think him and Dyson will get along because Dyson is that's very similarly a maniac worker and competitor. I look forward to Dyson's answer, by the way, to the question you will ask him at media day about flopping and taking charges. But no, all the boxes checked. This is obviously getting way far ahead, but I can see already in a playoffs environment, maybe they can't play Luke Kennard in a playoff environment, right? That's one of the questions about Luke we might get to in a second. In these 6 minutes a game in a playoff game that Trey's on the bench, you just go nuclear and you're playing Nickeil, Dyson, 2 wings or whatever, and you're trying to have a 95 defensive rating for 6 minutes a game, and if you can score enough, and that's an if for sure, but maybe you have to use Porzingis or whatever it's going to be to do that. That is a terrifying defensive backcourt. End of game situations when maybe you're up 1, you're up 2, and you can put those guys on the court, take Trey off, and you have no weaknesses. It's scary. I mean, that's something coaches start thinking about now in August. It's like, how are you going to score against? And you're probably not going to score against those guys very often. So, couple questions that I wanted to ask you about, and actually you brought it up organically, was the whole backup point guard thing. And I use that. I almost hate that term now because, like, I actually, speaking of media day, I'm looking forward to hearing how Quinn talks about it.
Yeah. And
Quinn, as you know now, you've been around long enough. Quinn does not always like to share a lot of things about a lot of things, but sometimes you'll get a thing where he'll talk about something with more depth. And they clearly, if you look at the way they built the roster, in my opinion, this is an Austin thing more than a Quinn thing, but like they're going by committee. They just have a bunch of options to throw a backup point guard. And I kind of like it. Maybe I'm coping. I don't know. Maybe I'll be wrong. But I think they have enough options and enough different looks. And I keep mentioning Canard, who we'll talk about if he wants to during this conversation. I think Canard might be the best of them all on offense as far as like playing a backup point guard in giant quotes. He can't defend point guards. But if you have guys like, I don't know, Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels and Kobe Buffkin even, who could all defend multiple positions at the guard spots, it's a lot easier to play Luke Kennard. Like Luke and Trey minutes might be taxing. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Especially in a playoff series, I think you probably can't do that. But Are you of the mind that I am, where like they've thrown resources at it? There isn't one guy. I know it'd be easier to explain to listeners, readers, fans if they had one guy, but I think that they're going to go into the season with 4 options and see what happens, see what works.
Yeah, I think the concept of a backup point guard is probably a bit archaic in today's NBA, and that's mainly just because ball handling duties are so spread, right? Like, there's no reason why KP can't initiate offense from time to time. There's no reason why Nickeil can. There's no reason why you can't play through your bigs, why you can't play through Jalen. And I think if we're talking about the options for backup point guard, I don't want Westbrook, and I'm not interested in Tyus Jones. And those are those are the guys that like would be within the Hawks price range or within any sort of rationale for signing them. Like, you're not going to throw a bunch of resources at a position that can't play with Trey and can at max play 16 to 12 minutes a night in the regular season, and then in the playoffs you're like, we're good. You may not even play some games. So I don't really have a particular like anxiety about backup point guard. I think when you talk about Luke Kennard, I mean, I don't think I have to tell people he's a great shooter, but I mean, we're talking about a 46% 3-point shooter.
But honestly, though, not to cut you off.
Yeah,
people still don't realize it. I know people think about Luke as a shooter. Part of them say he's a 6'5" white guy. I get it, but I still don't think people understand how good shooter he is. It's
like
crazy
this is like it's Curry, Clay, Canard, and Buddy Hield probably like for like the last 5 years, and this is a guy who distorts defense. Like, the one thing, if the Hawks are going to have a movement offense, I've always kind of felt like you need a movement shooter because it's just a natural fit. And we're talking about a guy who's legitimately the most accurate 3-point shooter on volume. He also is a great passer, to your point. He was in the 90th percentile in potential assists per 1 minute on ball. Memphis runs a wheel offense. They completely took away any sort of like heliocentrism from their offense. It was all a democracy. I mean, everyone was just passing the ball. They're getting on and off of it, right? Like, and Luke was a huge benefactor of that because he's so used to playing in movement and space that it's intuitive for him, right? So really great passes. Like, I have a reel on my page that's playing right now, and it's just like, it's easy for him. Like, he's driving closeouts and he's hitting guys on the interior. Like, these aren't just skip passes. These aren't just, hey, I'm making the next read. Like, I'm manipulating defenses. I'm using my ability as a scorer and shooter to really pass guys open. And he's not a guy that can just, create it out of isolation, but that's fine. I mean, we have good screeners on this team, and he's not going to be like unilaterally relied on to create offense. So I would agree with you. I think he probably is in that conversation as like the guy who will shake it out. I really can't wait to have like a Kyle Korver-esque feeling in the building. Like when Luke flies across the screen, I am in full belief that he's making that shot. And like, that's a level of like, of course, we're just talking about like the emotions of being a fan, but like, that's a really good feeling as a fan to be like, hey, this guy's making this, I have no doubts, so I think it's going to be a really enjoyable watch. And I was like tweaking around or like playing around with some metrics earlier this summer, and I wanted to look for guys who are like overperforming with their offensive performance relative to their estimated teammate help. And those Grizzlies teams didn't have the best offensive personnel. Like, they were like, if you look at the guys they were playing with, like, they weren't a ton of great offensive players outside of Jaren and Ja. And Luke had like the highest in the metric I calculated, like he had the highest overperformance, like of offensive, like sort of numbers, offensive rating when he was on the court of any player on the Grizzlies. And so that means something to me, like, and it's something I'm still trying to parse out and refine, but I think I expect to see a similar offensive impact for the Hawks because he is that much of a threat as a shooter, and he's grown that much as a passer that, I mean, he's I wouldn't call him a triple threat because he can't defend much, but he's a dual threat for sure offensively, and he's a dynamo offensively too. Like, he's a level above those Max Strus types of guys. Like, he's going to be a lot of fun, and I think that there may be questions in the playoffs, but if you want to go a fully defensively tilted lineup, you can't play Trey for whatever reason, and he's tired, you could throw Luke in there. Like, it may be Luke instead of Dyson, and now you might be able to make something shake. So yeah, he would probably be my pick as well, and I share that same optimism.
This is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is almost here. FanDuel's making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet for just $5. And if your first bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. FanDuel is great because if it's however you like to bet, they have it for you at FanDuel Sportsbook, whether it's player props, same-game parlays, straight bets, futures, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's all there for you at FanDuel. And also, make every game more exciting at FanDuel, whether you're watching your favorite teams or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineups, no matter what they have. It comes to every single sport as well, all the way across the board from the NFL, college football, the NBA, of course, baseball, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing. They have boxing, MMA, and so much more. FanDuel is quick. It's easier. They're also fast to pay out when you win, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So the question is, are you ready to play at FanDuel Sportsbook? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com. Put your first $5 bet and get $300 in bonus bets. Check it out today at FanDuel.com. Yeah, and how do I put this? No one had said this plainly, but my read, and this is reporting side of me, is that they really wanted to pair Luke with Nickeil. And not necessarily on the court, but as signings. Like, there's a reason those came out on the same day. Those came out the same day. There was a lot of smoke around Nickeil on the Hawks for a couple days before that deal happened. And I think that's part of the reason why they were okay giving Luke a little bit of a balloon payment. It's 1 year, which is why they did it as well. There's no risk long term. It's 1 year, $11 million. But I think the Hawks really like the concept of Canard on this team. And not with Trey. Obviously, him and Trey is a different situation. But having him to be able to play with Nickeil and also with Dyson, like having two options to pair with him in the backcourt that make perfect sense on both ends of the floor. Like, it just makes a ton of sense to me. And it was not that it was a package deal. They weren't a package deal. But like, I think the Hawks, once it became clear that they were probably going to get Nickeil, they got more serious about Kennard, from my understanding. And I think that makes logical sense. Like, having those guys together, because if they hadn't gotten Nickeil, I don't think they would have spent $11 million on Luke Kennard, because they would have had to figure out something else. Like, they would have had a bigger need for another wing. You know what I mean? They got Nickeil in that role, and that allowed them to be okay giving the 1 year balloon to Luke, who also, again, checks the boxes that they need, like the backup point guard box or whatever, the backup lead guard, initiator, or whatever you want to put box. And the shooting is what it is. I mean, they have enough shooting. We haven't talked about it a lot in this conversation, but the clearly purposeful offseason work by the front office to add shooting, like it can't be more obvious. The three guys, really, if you throw in Caleb Houstan, who's only on a non-guaranteed deal, but the three big ads: Porzingis, high-level shooter; Nickeil, really good shooter, not elite, but really good; and Canard, obviously ridiculous. And I think you and I've even had this chat on the pod or offline. They just haven't had enough shooting on the roster for like 2 years, 3 years. They haven't had enough shooting, and everybody knows it, and it makes everybody's life harder. But now you have all these shooting. I mean, Luke Kennard is literally the active career NBA leader in three-point percentage. He is a better three-point percentage than Steph. Now, obviously, he's not as good as Steph. Steph has the volume that's crazy and all that. But Luke Kennard is like one of the best shooters of all time. It might sound like I'm being hyperbolic, and I'm really not.
No, he is. He is.
So all that to say, and he's not just a shooter. Like, I'm sure this happened to you too when they signed Kennard. It was like, well, why is he any better than Garrison Matthews? And it's like, well, due respect, I like Garrison. I think Garrison's an NBA player. I do. I think Garrison's an NBA player. He is not Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard has, as a shooter, Garrison's like somewhat comparable. Not quite to the level, but Garrison's really good. But Garrison can't run a pick and roll. Luke Kennard is a legitimate pick and roll operator. You said that earlier. I think I maybe have a similar one. Luke averaged the last 2 years in Memphis 6.7 assists per 100 possessions as a shooting guard. Like, that's not a number that a lot of guys check the box of. So, and that's I didn't mean to pair Nickeil and Luke together, but like I said, I think they do kind of complement each other. Nickeil is way more important. That's why we started with Nickeil. But I like the fit of all of them. And not that Nickeil is Dyson Insurance, but it's nice to be able to play 40, if you want to play 48 minutes with a high level perimeter defender on the court, at least one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also curious how you feel about this, but like, how do you think that the Luke Trey pairing isn't feasible because we don't have defensive player of the year level Clint Capella behind them? Or do you think that he's that much more destructive than like a Kevin Huerter or a Bogdan Bogdanovic?
I think that Kennard is worse than those guys defensively. I think in the regular season, it will probably be fine, honestly. they're going to have to score. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to say that. Like, if you play Luke and Trey, you're obviously trying to bomb the opposing team out of whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
But if you surround those guys, so you played Luke and Trey, two of, Dyson, Nickeil, Zach, and Jalen, two of those four with them, and then a center. Like, yeah, that's a bad defensive group because Luke is bad. I mean, maybe you don't agree. I actually want to know what you think about this, because I think Kennard is pretty damaging defensively. He'll compete, which I do like, but he's both under athletic and he's not very strong. And that combination, playing with a guy like Trey, like, you need to be able to hide. Hiding one of them is doable. And the Hawks, I think, have done a pretty good job of hiding Trey, and Trey's bought into that and cooperated and played within the system a lot better in the last couple of years defensively. But everyone knows on the court who they're hiding. It's Trey. You know what I mean? Like, they're all there's schemes to hide Trey. You can't hide two guys at once. And I think that against certain teams, it would be totally fine. And against other teams, it probably won't be. And in a playoff series, I think you are playing with fire, because then it's every possession, the opponent's going to come down and say, we are going at you two, however we possibly can. We're picking one of you, and that's going to be the end of that. But regular season, this is a long answer, but regular season wise, it can work. They can play 8 minutes a game together, 10 minutes a game together. That's fine. 12 minutes a game together. I just don't know if it's like a serious playoff thing. But by the way, when you get to the playoffs, you're playing 7 guys anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm kind of looking at like the Morant numbers with Canard, because I was like, I'm curious how often they paired them. And in 3 seasons together, like, they only played 500 minutes together. Now, of course, there were injuries, suspensions, and injuries. But I mean, over that time, Ja still played 3,000 minutes, and Canard played 2,000. So it's kind of like, it's an unspoken thing. Whereas, to your point, it's hard to hide two guys. It's impossible to hide two guards. And the Knicks had trouble like having Cat and Jalen Brunson on the floor together. And so it is something that, you feel a lot better about it if you have 2021 Capella behind you, for sure.
Sure.
I think it's an interesting thing that they could do from time to time against certain teams. I agree with that for sure. But I also think like they might just be so crazy offensively that you might need to try it for like maybe 2 minutes at a time, because I mean, again, tiny sample size, but when he played with Ja, like, they were a +6 offensive rating relative to the league average. And I mean, of course, Memphis has better defensive personnel during those years to not be, bleeding too much value on defense. But I mean, in those 500 minutes, it was a +8, +9 net rating. So he is that level offensive player. Of course, we know Trey is too. Giving him that level shooter next to him, it may be worth trying from time to time. But I definitely agree that when you think about just the pure size factor, Bogey and Herter were both able to hold up physically in a way that Luke Kennard just doesn't have a chance. And if they're both on the floor, then it's like, who's guarding the ball? And that
becomes the problem. That becomes the problem because it's two guards. It's a great point, because they're functionally the 1 and the 2 on offense when they're playing together. And you can put Dyson on the court with them or Nickeil on the court with them. That's fine. But if you put that guy on the ball, then you have 2 weaknesses on. Anyway, we can probably do this forever. But I think that they can play together. They should play together. They will play together. When the chips are down, I'm skeptical. But like that's a playoff problem more than anything. And like, how much do you believe? Like, Canard, I've always been in the tank for Canard. I will raise my hand about that. But some of his defensive metrics are really, really rough. Like, he's like, I'm looking at this now, like 8th percentile defensive EPM, at least the expected one. There was a year, I think it was 2021, where he was, I think, literally the 0th percentile EPM defender in the league or something like that. Like, there's some ugliness. Now, part of that is who you're playing with. That was a season where he was in LA with a different situation, and but on the bright side, to bring it full circle, this is a roster now where they're really, maybe Veet is the other one, but Veet's better than Kennard, but not great. But if you were to take Veet away for a second, everybody else you're playing in a game that's is at least pretty good or better defensively. And that does help you. Like, you don't have, like, last year, if you're putting Canard on the floor with like George Niang, like, then you have danger, or David Roddy or Don Barlow. But like, now if you think about it, you got a Kongwu, Porzingis, and Mo as your 3 front court guys, all fine or better. Jalen, fine. Ricochet, I think, is going to be fine this year. Dyson and Nickeil are really good. Like, at least you don't have to worry about the other 3 spots. I mean, as long as you're not playing Veet, and I don't think that they would ever willingly try Trey, Kennard, and Veet. Other than that, I think it'd be fine. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe if they needed 3 or something like that. 2 other points of optimism, though. This was his highest. This past season was his highest steal rate ever, his highest deflection rate ever. You can't be unathletic, short, and not competitive. And to your point, he was much more competitive using his hands, and that comes with having offensive feel. So he was in better places, able to use his hands. So that will be meaningful. It helps that Trey's on that same path as well. And so that's kind of like how you scratch your way to being league average defensively with a guy like that on the floor, because you know what he's going to do offensively.
Yeah, I totally agree. Before I let you go, and I'm already keeping you too long, so my apologies. If you have to go, you can tell me that. I want it because I know you're a sicko like me. I can ask you this: what do you think about Caleb Houstan and Folly Dante?
Man, when we signed the Folly, I cut on the film, and it was like 50 clips, maybe. I was able to find something like that.
Yeah,
and I mean, you'll like this, but he has some Capella to him.
He does. They're actually quite similar in some ways. It's funny. Yeah.
So like even like I remember like Capella's a drop coverage technique. Like he would always have one hand low, and I saw in Folly do that. And I like pointed at the screen. I was like, oh wait, that's interesting, because like that's the type of stuff that makes a guy like him who unfortunately had like so many injuries in college, like so many injuries. His knees were constantly getting torn up, and regardless though, he's still a crazy physical specimen. Like catch radius is nuts. He doesn't get off the ground as much as he used to, but I think he has a very clear NBA role. Is like, hey, set screens, roll hard, defend the paint, and clean the glass. I thought I have a whole bunch of clips saved that I'll eventually get to at some point during the offseason. But he's insurance. I think when some Rockets fans let me know, like I remember him being a good screener in college. They said they didn't necessarily see that in Houston, and so that's probably something that they need to keep an eye on, because if you can't set screens well, then it's kind of tough for a guy like him who's a little bit offensively limited. But and then Caleb Houstan is like, and this is something I saw Keith Smith tweet this out, but Milwaukee has a roster crunch. So they have Amir Coffey on a camp deal, and then they have Andre Jackson on a guaranteed deal, but they just signed Thanasis. And so presuming they're going to keep Thanasis. So they have to get rid of 2 guys, and one of them is going to be a guaranteed deal. Now, Andre Jackson Jr. is a guy that I would take as a wing on this Hawks team before I would take Caleb Houstan. And that's just because I think his defense is an NBA skill. Caleb Houston's shooting, yes, it is as well. But I think that it's a little bit duplicative. And I don't know if he'll ever be physical enough for me to be comfortable with him as a 3 on this team. Like for Orlando, it's whatever, because Orlando is such a big, imposing team with physicality everywhere. But for us, I kind of want the wings to be a little bit more robust defensively. And I don't think he has that. I mean, you've probably shared this when they made the signing, but I mean, he's the only player 6'8" or higher with no dunks in the NBA.
With no dunks, yeah.
He's the tallest player in the NBA, I believe, with 0 dunks. And so, like, when you play at 6'2", at 6'8", it doesn't matter to me how tall you are. And so he's not a wing. He's really more of a shooting guard than anything. And of course, when you have also like anemic steal and block numbers, anemic rebounding numbers, he's functionally a shooting guard. And so I would probably take Andre Jackson Jr. if he becomes available. I presume that's what Onsi's keeping that spot open for, like optionality, because Milwaukee will have to let someone go. I think I would take Caleb Houstan over Amir Coffey, maybe. Splitting hairs, I don't think either of them are like needle movers. I think Coffey has a better frame, so I might consider him, but I wouldn't be I'm not hung up on Houstan where like I'm saving that spot for him. Like there may be someone who shakes out by the start of the season that I'd much rather have, just because I think they play the wing role better. But I mean, he's a simple value proposition. He can shoot it, and maybe if he gets more aggressive, he can be good enough defensively to make sense in an NBA rotation.
Yeah, I think Houstan and Jackson Jr. are like really interesting because like they're totally different. Like it's like it's basically what do you want? Like they're very comparable players. Like overall, I mean, they're just very different players. Like the opposite.
Yeah.
I think Houstan on a non-guaranteed minimum is a good signing. Like I think was a good, but also the optionality is there on purpose. And by the way,
is he on a camp deal or is he a minimum?
Camp deal.
Okay.
So it's a non-guaranteed minimum. So it's an exhibit 10. Dante's is non-guaranteed too. Like I know it was an offer sheet, but it's non-guaranteed. So they basically have two spots where if somebody better comes up, they can shake hands and move on. And I think that's good in general. Houstan shooting is a skill. I was a little bit encouraged. Like I'm a Michigan guy. I watched Caleb Houstan in college. It was not a guy I liked very much as a draft prospect. Contrary to popular belief, I don't like every Michigan prospect. In fact, I'm pretty low on several Michigan prospects. Like Jet Howard, never saw it, never got it. Danny Wolf this year, not really a Danny Wolf guy. But every time I defend Kobe, someone says it's only because I'm a Michigan fan. It's like, no, I don't really like Michigan player. Anyway, Caleb Houstan was a guy I didn't like that much. He got a little bit. I think his defense has gotten a little bit more acceptable. Okay. A little bit more as it's gone along. But there's a reason why he was available for a non-guaranteed minimum contract.
Right.
Like, and it's because he is, to your point, more of a shooting guard. It's insurance. The shooting is an NBA skill. Like, I think one good thing about having him around is if you get an injury or two and you need just an NBA level player to play 15 minutes on a Tuesday in January, he can do that for you and space the floor. That's valuable to have on your bench. Dante, I actually liked that move. I don't know if he's like meaningfully better than a lot of the other guys that were available, but also there's more room for him to be better, if that makes sense. Like I was not interested in most of the like generic third center options who were available on the market.
Yeah.
For the Hawks at the minimum. They were never going to go more than the minimum for anybody, basically, in that spot. And getting a guy who's at least, I know you're right, because he's got more age on his legs than his actual age. But by all accounts, and I will always say I don't watch a ton of the G League. I watch College Park, and that's about it most of the time. He was really good last year in the G League. People that I talked to that were not affiliated with the Rockets or the Hawks were like, no, he was one of the best bigs in the G League last year. It's like, okay, that check the box. Like if you, and it's really the same principle. If you look up in December and Porzingis is out for a month and you just need somebody there who can play 10 minutes a night, I think he can do that. And that's not going to move your life in one direction or the other, but you have to have some other guys there if you just need something. So that was the only thing we were actually in total synergy earlier about backup point guard and not being terribly worried about it. The one thing I actually was worried about was they needed to sign a center of some kind. And they finally did. And they finally did it. So once they signed Dante, I was like, all right, that was the one thing they had to do. And not because I don't believe in anybody. Like, I think Mo Gay is obviously going to play ahead of Dante, but they just needed one more body at center because you cannot go into the season with three guys on your whole team that can even pretend to play center. That's not going to work because I don't think Ace is going to be ready to play NBA center this year. I like Ace either, but I don't. Not to your. I know your doppelganger and everything, but do you like that, by the way, or is it bothering you? People are doing that to you.
I get compared to like every light skinned NBA player, so it's nothing new. Quite honestly, I mean, I get Michael Porter Jr. I don't
see that at all. I get see Asa a little bit. I don't see Michael Porter Jr. at all. So anyway, but no, we could probably talk about Asa another time. But no, Dante Houstan makes sense, but it is. I did like a whole 20-minute riff on this, but like the way they did this is so Auntie. Auntie basically ensured that he has total flexibility. And even Juricic, who I know the Hawks like more than everybody else does, if they had to move on from him, they could. He makes $1 million. They could, the Hawks have a lot of optionality. That's Auntie's favorite word, but it's true. Well, David, we spent way too long on this. My apologies for keeping you this long. Anything else you want to say, feel free. The floor is yours. And if not, we should plug all your stuff because it's awesome. I'm a follower and everything other than TikTok. I'm too old. I'm just too old. I gave up on TikTok. But what's going on in your life?
Yeah, I mean, you never got to apologize about talking Hawks, man. This is what I think about probably 24/7. So always a pleasure. I'll always make time for you, Brad. But yeah, I'm trying to just, get some videos out before the media day starts in about a month or so. I have a lot of player profiles in my notes. I just got to get around the recording. I'm DLE for 3, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, as you mentioned. Instagram as well, doing some graphics with my guy Tip Off Ball, who does really great graphics. So we recently talked about like the 4.5 problem, guys who are tweeners, something that could potentially happen to Asa, and that's something I'll explore when I talk about his player profile before the season starts. But of course, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Brad, for inviting me on.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you doing this. Like I said, I would, if perfect world, I would bug you all the time, but you got your own content to produce, so I won't do that too much. But we'll pick some more spots hopefully and reconnect. And if you ever need anything from me, we'll do it. But check out David's content; it's awesome. I don't just have anybody on the show. I trust your opinion, and it's appreciated that you spent this much time talking all things here on a holiday when we recorded this, because you're that much of a gentleman to me. As for everybody else, please subscribe to Locked On Hawks one more time. Check out David's content, and we'll see everybody next time.